Welcome to our second episode of Tech Talks. So the point of these Tech Talks is to help you better understand the products that we offer. So if you've got questions or anything like that, this is a good time you can send those in. Today we're going to be focusing on metalworking.
My name is Nick DeMars.
Oh, I'm Danny Burnett.
And I'd like to encourage you, if you do have questions, I'd like to encourage you to send those in to TechTalk@KLINGSPOR.com. Once again, that's TechTalk, TechTalk, no spaces in between, at KLINGSPOR.com. And we will, if we don't get to your questions during this particular show, we will put them in a database that we have, and we'll go ahead and move them down to one of our next shows and get to them at that point in time. So today we're going to be talking about metalworking and some products we have to do things with in the metalworking area, specifically bonded abrasives. So Danny, what are bonded abrasives?
Bonded abrasives, what that is going to be a mixture of like grit, resin, filler, and your Teflon inner layer. So we have an image for you. So looking at this, you can see the grit, which is the thing that scratches or abrades the workpiece. Then your resin, that is your glue that is holding your grit. Then after that, you're going to have your filler, which is, if you look in that picture, you can kind of see some pores and empty spaces. So that filler is really what goes in there to kind of close that up so you don't have loading issues. So it kind of takes off from that. And one of the most important things is going to be your Teflon inner layer. So this is pretty much what holds everything together. It's that grid shape pattern that you see in that image. So what it does, everything closes into that. What that'll do is it gives you stability, and it does help out with a little bit of the longevity side of things, but really it's meant there for that stability. So you do have ones that have 4 layers or 3 layers or 2 layers that go into it. So that's where your stability comes from.
So that's a very important part of a cutoff wheel or grinding disc.
Oh yes, it is. Because if you don't have that, it's honestly, you've got too much flimsy going, you really can't cut. So that really keys that in there. So one of the things we're also going to talk about today is we're going to go over cutoff wheels and grinding discs. First thing we're going to start with is grinding disc. We have a video for you. Today we're going to talk about the proper angle to use for a grinding disc and how to know you're using it correctly. Grinding discs are supposed to run at an approximate angle of 35 degrees. So far so good, but clearly nobody will use a protractor to make sure they're running at the correct angle. So how do you find the right technique? A rule of thumb is that you should probably be able to barely fit a fist under your hand while grinding. This ensures the disc will run smoothly and safely while removing material. But why does this matter? Why can't we run it flat or at a steep angle? Running a grinding disc flat makes it very hard to remove the material and shortens the life of your disc. The flatter you run the disc, the harder it is to see the material you are removing, and it is more likely to scratch and damage the material beside the weld. A straight up or very high angle puts a different kind of strain on the disc and will not help you to remove the material any quicker. Grinding in a high angle forces you to use more pressure that will cause gouging, as the results are harder to see. In addition, it could destroy the outer structure of the disc, making it unsafe for use. Using the correct technique really does help proficiency, allows you to see the material you are grinding, and provides the safest use of the disc. Oh, it's such a great video.
Absolutely.
So the big thing to take away from that is knowing your proper angle when you're going into a grinding disc. Keeping it about that 35-degree angle really does help out. And it's just going to help it go, you're going to have, I'm trying to think of the better words, go smoother, and you're going to be able to have a better removal part for it. So that does help out a whole lot. Big things with grinding discs though, in 1945, KLINGSPOR actually invented the high-speed grinding disc. And so ever since then, we've been progressing and progressing and progressing just to make them better. And so now we've got a lot more different grinding discs than we actually had back then. One key thing, like I said in that video, is that 35-degree angle. And the whole point behind that is, so if you're going there, if you're keeping it about that 35-degree angle, you're actually able to get better removal. So if you're angled up too much, you're having to put a lot of pressure, and so the pressure's really not as much on your workpiece that you're working on. And then if you go too low down into it, what'll happen is you're scratching the sides, but that pressure's still not on the tip, it's still more on that inside, and we really need more of that pressure on the tip.
And by no means are we saying to get out a protractor and measure your angle to see if it's exactly 35. But if you have that in the back of your mind, you'll be more likely to get that proper angle or get very close to it.
Oh, exactly. So you know, one of the questions I get a lot is, why is a grinding disc called a grinding disc? So the whole point behind those is the grinding disc is actually used on the face. So that's the reason why we call that a disc, because it's used on the face. So whenever you're doing it at that 35-degree angle, and you are really working that front part, but you're still taking away from the face. So that's one of the bigger reasons why that's that. For a grinding disc, we offer them from 4 inches all the way up to 9 inches. And right through there, most of the time it's always going to be that 1/4 inch. We've got a few that'll vary, but most of the time it is going to be a 1/4 inch in thickness. So it does take a big part on for that. So we have, for those, we do have cutoff wheels that are very, they go from different thicknesses, but grinding disc, you really do want to keep that 1/4 inch thickness going for it.
Gives you a little bit of meat there to work with.
It does, yeah, very much so. So next we're going to talk about is our cutoff wheels. So we do have a video for you on this. Hello all, my name is Danny Burnett. I am the product specialist for cutoff wheels and grinding discs with KLINGSPOR Abrasives. Today I'm going to talk to you about something I get many questions about: the thicknesses of cutoff wheels for use on an angle grinder. One of the most popular questions I get on this topic is it true that the thinner the cutoff wheel, the quicker the cut? The basic answer is yes, but a lot will depend on what material you are cutting. Let's dive further into this. The first thing you want to do when choosing a cutoff wheel is making sure you're getting the right wheel for the right application. The information can be found on the wheel itself. If you look at the outlining color, this wheel tells you what this wheel is recommended for. This is a color code chart, designating what color is attached to a certain material. The color code does not mean that this is the only material the wheel is used for, but it does show what it is best for. Once we have the right wheel for the right application, then we need to look at the material you are cutting once again to see how thick it is. Remember, the thicker the material you are cutting, the more stability you need in a cutoff wheel. The thicker the cutoff wheel is, the more stability you have during your cut. Following this diagram will give you the best option for a cutoff wheel to have the fastest cut. In conclusion, yes, the thinner the cutoff wheel, the quicker the cut. But we need to have a more detailed look to make sure the cutoff wheel you are using has the stability to make the cut properly and safely.
So Danny, excellent video on cutoff wheels.
Oh, man.
Really good video.
Oh, yeah.
Great information. We're going to step back into the realm of grinding discs for just a moment. We got a question from one of our viewers, Crisscross Crafts.
Okay.
And they want to know what keeps the grinding disc from coming apart while you're using it.
Okay, so that's something we were going to talk about a little bit in the video, but it is a great question. So it's your bonding agent. So what happens is, so you've got your Teflon inner layer, your grit and your resin, all that puts together. But that bonding agent, depending on how hard it is, that's what's going to keep holding it together. So one kind of rule of thumb we use around here is the softer the bond, the quicker the removal, but also it doesn't last as long. So the harder the bond is, it's going to last longer. It just won't have that much removal. So one thing I usually tell people, it's kind of like having a cup and you're pouring 3/4 of it with grit, and then you put the rest of it with glue, and so at that point you're going to have a lot of grit but not enough glue to really keep it in. Does that make sense? And so then if we flip that, so if I put a lot more glue in, so if I do 50% glue, 50% grit, you know that bond's really going to hold that in together and keep it in place, and so it's going to make it last longer.
And one of the things that kind of ties into that, and I've heard you say this, is that 35-degree angle that you talked about. Because if you're using too sharp of an angle, the disc will actually wear away a lot faster.
It will, yep. That's exactly right. And so that's where that 35-degree angle is one of the most key things that we talk about here at KLINGSPOR, is keeping running it at that 35-degree angle. But yeah, all right, so let's get back from that right there, going after that video. Great video. So we're going to hit up on cutoff wheels. So why is a cutoff wheel called a cutoff wheel? Get that question pretty good amount of times. So the reasons why it's actually used on the edge, similar to like your wheel on your tire or something like that, it's used on the edge. And so that's what's going to go into that cutting pattern. So for those, anytime for all of our cutoff wheels, we like to cut at that 90-degree angle. You want to be cutting straight down through it. You know, because if you're cutting at an angle when you're doing it, you have that tendency to pull, which could break or chip your cutoff wheel, which is very dangerous. And biggest part going into that, looking at the danger, like safety. For us, safety is very important. So that's the reason why we have our OSA stamps on all of our cutoff wheels and grinding discs. So that is the organization for the safety of abrasives. That's such an important key factor that we pretty much have here, like we're part of that certification, you know. And so whenever you do go to look for a cutoff wheel and or grinding disc, please do look for that OSA symbol. So it's going to set you apart knowing that this wheel is safe. The ways that they kind of go about it is, so they test every single, like if you come up with a new wheel, they're going to test it, and they test it to the highest specifications that I know of. So, you know, we have our American standard, this is a European standard, and for that OSA, it is tested really difficultly. And so it's very hard to pass that, and if you make that and you get that mark, that's saying, hey, this wheel is a really good wheel. If you treat this wheel properly, it will last you and it will not hurt you. And that's such an important part into these, especially when you're looking at cutoff wheels, because you do have, you know, that tendency for it to pop, or, you know, if you can hear the cracking or if you feel that vibration going. So a lot of people get worried about those. With that OSA symbol, it says, hey, do things the proper way and you will not get hurt. And that's such an important thing.
Very important.
To have for it. But for our cutoff wheels we have here, so we have cutoff wheels that range from 2 inches all the way up to 16 inches, and it all varies based on the machines that it will go on. So it does help out a whole lot with that. You know, be it on a die grinder, you're going to be using like your 2 inch or your 3 inch, and then going up to your angle grinder, you know, from your 4 inch all the way up to your 9 inches, and then low powered chop saws, gas powered saws, all those. Like, we do have wheels for all those applications, so it does help out a whole lot on them. Anytime you go into those places, or if you as a customer, you're looking in like, hey, you know, I need something for my chop saw, but I also need something for my die grinder, we've got all those things here and are all OSA certified. So that's a big thing for it. Ooh, excuse me. So the next one of the parts for us that we talk about is thickness and stability. So I get this question often, hey, just because you're, you know, do thinner cutoff wheels not last as long? It's yes and no. So you've got a lot of variables that go into that, be it operator errors or, you know, the material that you're cutting on. All those things really play a factor into it. But yes, usually, you know, for us, we have our .045 cutoff wheels in thickness. And so will they last as long as, you know, a 1/16? And those, not really, but they will cut faster. So that's one of the bigger things. So when you look for a thinner wheel, you're looking for that speed, but you can go to certain areas for those to get longevity and those kind of things. But you also want to make sure you're getting the right wheel for the right application. So, you know, you wouldn't want to get a .045 and go out and cut something that's 3 inches thick.
Oh yeah.
You know, because your stability is not gonna hold out to that. Whereas, you know, if you got a 1/16, or different sizes go for different things. So that's one thing for you as viewers. Love, you know, to give a call in and say, hey, here's what I'm cutting on. Here's my machine I'm using. What wheel do you have? We love to get those questions. And honestly, our big thing is getting the right wheel for the right application. That's huge for us. But, you know, going on that same level of thickness, you know, your stability and your thickness go hand in hand. So for me, you know, for A946TZ, this wheel is a 1/16 in thickness. It has better stability than such as like our A960 that's a .045 in thickness. So those two go real important for that.
So as we talk about all this, what are the things that we should take away from what we're talking about when we, you know, bring all this information out about bonded abrasives? What are the main takeaways we should have?
Yeah, honestly, getting the right wheel for the right application, that's such such an important key factor into it. Making sure the thickness of the cutoff wheel is what you need to go with the piece that you're working on. So keeping those in line are really important. And then also expiration dates. So if you look at this, yeah, man, it's such a big part to it, especially, you know, for people that aren't as big of users. They'll go, you know, they'll have something on their shelf for like 2, 3, 4 years, and so they don't really know this part to it. But so if you look at this picture, you can see where it says V01/2022. So what that is, that's the expiration date. So pretty much all your cutoff wheels out there are going to have these expiration dates on them. You don't want to go past that expiration date, just because at that point we say, hey, they're not as safe as they once were to use. So that's one thing for going on to that. But what they do is they last 3 years from the date of manufacture. So for this one right here, obviously it would have been, you know, in January 2019 was when this was made, and then January 2022 is when it's going to go out.
It's interesting you should bring that information out. You must be a mind reader of some sort, because we just got a question from Mike, one of our viewers here, that says, what is the shelf life of a grinding disc?
Oh, man.
Okay. And should I buy several at a time or only what I need for the job?
Oh, great question. If it was me in those shoes, so shelf life for cutoff wheels and grinding disc are those 3 years. But really you want to just buy for that job if you can. You know, I mean, if you're a bigger user or something like that, if you're going to be going through, you know, a box of cutoff wheels, you know, a week or something like that, yeah, you can go ahead and stockpile. But I mean, if you're just going through a box like every, you know, year or something like that, just buying that one box is totally fine, because so what will happen is your cutoff wheel and grinding disc will break down. So, you know, if you get them right at the date of manufacture within those 3 years, like, man, they are really good wheels. But the longer they go, the less that they're able to grind as well. They'll start removing a lot more, or the grains will start removing from, like, coming off as you're grinding, so they're just not able to last as long, if that makes sense. I feel like I worded that a touch weird, but I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I think we got the gist of what you were trying to say there.
Man, good. Yep. I almost hit a ramble point.
So I want to encourage you again, if you're watching us this afternoon, go ahead and send your questions in. If you have questions, send them in to TechTalk@KLINGSPOR.com. And as you see, you know, we'll take live questions during the show, or like I say, we'll put them in a database, save them for maybe the next show if we talk about metal, or, you know, the next time we do talk about metal. We'll bring your question back out, but we are not going to leave you hanging on these questions. We will get them answered for you. So speaking of that, we do have some more questions here from some folks that sent them in to our Tech Talk email address. First off, we have John, who asks, what is the speed for cutoff wheels to be run at?
Oh man, you know, that is such an important question, because RPMs can either make or break a wheel pretty much. So we do have an image for you on this. If you look at that red line right there, you can see that that is the max RPM for this wheel to be rated at. So it is very key and very important that you do not exceed that. And the reason why is because imagine this thing right here, and if I can't remember the picture exactly, I think it's going 12,000 some RPM, but imagine how fast that's going around. So let's say if you put it on something that's going, I don't know, 18,000 RPM, so I mean, you are just going so fast that whenever it goes to hit that bond and everything, it's going to have a rough time keeping up with that speed. And so that's where you have that ability to pop a disc or break a disc, however you want to say it, or a wheel, whichever one you're kind of working with at that time. So sticking with the RPMs is so important. And but yeah, so definitely looking at that picture, that red line, that will tell you your max RPM for not to exceed that. Great question, John.
Okay, our next question is from another viewer who asks, do you have cutoff wheels for gas-powered saws?
Oh, we do. So we've got them for gas-powered saws, stationary machines, low-powered chomp saws, angle grinders, and die grinders. So we literally have your cutoff wheel and grinding disc needs right here. So it is. Yes, we do.
Tim asks, if my cutoff wheel is loading up, does that mean it's completely done?
You know, this is such it's a harder question, because a lot depends on the application. So if it is loading up, my biggest thing I'm going to look at is this the correct wheel or disc for this application? So a lot of times the answer would be yes. So if I'm using a cutoff wheel on aluminum and it's starting to load up, you're kind of pretty much done on that right there, because you can't, oh, I'm going to go cut this right here and hope they come out. So in some ways, yes and no. But the biggest part to this is, if you get the right wheel for the right application, you really don't have to worry as much about these loading up, or the right disc, or grinding disc for the application. You don't have to worry about it as much. Like, you still do have that possibility, but just sticking with the right wheel for the right application, you're good to go.
Very simple.
Oh yeah.
Another question that was sent in, where would I find these cutoff wheels and grinding discs?
Okay. So for us, we really don't deal a whole lot with distributors. So for us, we would like you to give a call in, send an email in, any of those kind of things would really help out. But I know for us, we have reps, and so one thing I would challenge y'all to do is just call in. Be it you can ask us, the questions you need. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, Danny. Or, you can call in and say, hey, who's my local rep? And we can have a local rep come out to your area. So if you want to, write this number down. It is 1-800-645-5555. And that would be the number you call. Just call into customer service, ask the questions, and if you need technical assistance, if you want to reach out to me and or Nick, feel free to give us a call. We'd love to answer questions, applications, everything like that. That's what we're here for. Customer service can take orders and those kind of things. So feel free to reach out to us.
All right, here's a good one for you.
Okay.
Mark asks, what is your favorite cutoff wheel and why?
Okay, Mark, to answer your question, my favorite cutoff wheel is the A946TZ. The reasons why it does have that 1/16 in thickness. So I have that cutoff wheel speed that I need and the longevity. So it does help out going on to those. For this right here, you're looking at aluminum oxide. It's a 46 grit and it has a very hard bond. So you put all those together, you're going to have a quick cutting wheel that's going to last a long time.
Good stuff
so
right there.
It's huge.
Yep. Okay, and Ken sent in a question, says, what do the letters and numbers mean on your cutoff wheels and grinding discs?
Oh, okay. We actually have a diagram for this one right here. So if you're looking at these, so we've got an A960, K960, and Z960, those kind of things. So what that means is the A stands for aluminum oxide, the K stands for ceramic, just had a brain fart, sorry, the Z stands for zirconia, and the C stands for silicon carbide. So that is your grain that goes in. So all of the cutoff wheels and grinding discs at the front will have that letter. So that's what those mean. The next is, be it if it's an A960TZ, that 9 just means it's special. And then the 60 is going to be the grit, and the TZ is going to be the very hard bond. So also looking at like an A24 or grinding disc. So we know it's aluminum oxide, it's a 24 grit, and that R means it's a medium bond. So that's where all these letters and number mean. So if you use that right there, you can kind of figure out what disc you need for what application.
So question for you then. You just mentioned the word special.
Yep.
Where does that come in at? How does that work with our cutoff wheels and grinding discs?
Okay, so we have the extra, super, and special. So the extra means it's more on that general purpose side of things. So it's good at a lot of things, not really great at just one specific thing. And then that super is your middle of the road. So, it's good at a little bit of everything. It's specific for certain things, but you can use it for a wide variety of things. And then your special, that really means it's kind of meant for this one application, and it's made for this application. Like, yes, you can use it for other things, but the way it was made was for this application. So like for the A946TZ, my favorite cutoff wheel, it was made for stainless steel. I can use it on mild steel and I can use it on carbon steel, but it was generally made for that stainless steel. So it does a great job on all those, but it's really specific for that stainless steel market.
So hence the term special.
Exactly, exactly right.
Absolutely. All right, then we have Zach who asks, have you ever had a wheel shatter while you're using it?
Ooh, I have, and I feel like a lot of people have. It's one of those things for me, like I feel like it was more my fault because, you get into, you're cutting a sheet, be it however long, your brain starts to wander, you start to thinking about something, you're thinking about getting the job done quick, and you start to push a little harder, or you start twisting a little bit more, and the wheel popped. That's what happened to me. And it does, it's kind of one of those things that's going to happen to a lot of people. The biggest part for us, the part I feel safest about, is having that OSA certification, the Organization for the Safety of Abrasives. It makes me feel a lot more safer. So if I do give a little bit of a push, but not too much, I know that wheel is still going to be able to continue to cut and still continue to work with that. But I mean, you still do have that possibility of it happening. So there's a lot of different kind of key things that can make a wheel pop. So if you're cutting a straight line and you twist, be it left or right or whatever, all that force is now in that center of that disc. So it's kind of like taking your hand and then forcing it over here. So it's just going to make it pop. Or, you know, if you're cutting something that's a little bit too thick or whatever that you didn't really need to be cutting with that, yeah, you're going to feel that vibration whenever you twist it as you're cutting, and you're going to pop it. So it has happened to me, and I keep wanting to say I'm learning from it, but I still get in a rush when I do things. So obviously I'm not learning too well on a lot of those things. But it's been a hot minute since it's happened, so I'm good to go on that. But I know for our cutoff wheels, I really don't worry about it too much unless I'm just it's user error.
Yeah, I've worked a lot with wood, and it's not like you're taking a miter saw and cutting through a piece of wood, because that's just a few seconds.
Yep.
When you're using these products here, you're cutting for a long period of time, especially if your piece of metal is thicker.
Oh yeah. And
you know, when you, like you talked about, when you do start to bend that thing, that's going to create a weak spot in there.
Oh, it is.
So your chances of popping that wheel is going to be a whole lot greater.
You know, especially another key thing on that is like RPMs. You know, if you're going too high on the RPM scale, yeah, it's that one right there. You're kind of asking it to pop at that point. You know, if you go too far. You know, I'll use certain cutoff wheels like her 3-inch that goes on the die grinder, because most die grinders will run about 25,000 RPM. So if you get a cutoff wheel that's rated at 19,000 RPM, man, that you gotta look 19,000 running at a 25,000. It's flexing before it's cutting. So RPMs can be a big factor into those.
So do RPMs play into what the size of the disc is?
It will, yeah. In a lot of ways. So RPM is kind of figured with cutoff wheels and grinding discs, but it's based on, excuse me, so it's based on the actual sizes of these disc and wheels. You know, for your 2-inch, your 3-inch, and your 4-inch, like those are meant for your 2-inch, 3-inch, yeah, 4-inch. We have those for die grinders. And so we have certain speeds that are based around those. For your 4-inch, I think it's 19,000 RPM. For your 3-inch, it's 25.2 RPM for our cutoff wheels. And so they do have those variations. And then you go up into your angle grinders. And then you can see for that right there, you got 13.3 for a 4.5-inch. That's our max on these. And you know, a lot of those are running about 12.5 for an angle grinder. So making sure you're checking that and checking the wheel. Yeah, so 4.5-inch, as you move your way up, all those will have those different speeds.
And they'll start to slow down.
It will. So, but when you get into your bigger cutoff wheels for like your 12, 14, 16-inch cutoff wheels, at that point you've got to look at horsepower and RPM. Because a lot of those RPMs are rated about the same, but that horsepower is really taking that part into it as well.
All right, so for our final question that we have time for today, Stephen asks, and this is a big one right here, which cutoff wheel would you recommend for aluminum?
Oh, okay. So for me, I would go with their A60N. The reasons why, you know, it's aluminum oxide, it's a 60 grit, and it's got a soft bond. But with that one right there, it's got pore filler. And so it's going to help it from loading up. So when you're dealing with aluminum, like you're worried about it melting, and then as it's melting and it's going into your little pores and then it's loading up. So with our A60N, we really don't have that much of an issue going into it. So that's, for me, honestly, I would do the A60N because you don't have to worry about the loading factor onto it. So, and it's cutting through it fast enough to where it's not really melting it. So it does help out.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
Great information.
Oh yeah.
So I want to encourage you once again, if you do have questions, go ahead and send them in to TechTalk@KLINGSPOR.com. We would love to be able to help you out with the issue that you're having, or whatever application you might be facing. You've never done this sort of thing before. Maybe you want to know exactly which of the cutoff wheels and grinding discs you want to use for that particular application. Once again, TechTalk@KLINGSPOR.com, and we will get to your questions. Like I say, we're not going to leave you hanging. For next week, or our next episode actually, which is going to be September 1st, at 3 o'clock, we're going to be talking once again about woodworking, more specifically sandpaper in woodworking. So if you have some questions about that, go ahead and send them into to the email address there that I just told you about, and we will take those questions and use them live on the air the next time we're here. If you caught part of this broadcast, didn't get to see the whole thing, and you'd like to see it, you can go onto YouTube, our various platforms that we're on. Let's see, it's YouTube, LinkedIn, and
Facebook.
And what?
Facebook.
And Facebook. There you go.
That's it.
And all 3 of those. And you can go ahead and watch the entire episode and get all the information. And by the way, I do want to mention that all this information today is free. We're not going to charge you a thing for it.
A question for you.
Sure.
So you've done the woodworking one and now the metal one. Which one do you enjoy talking about or dealing with more? Do you like the metal side or the wood side?
Well, I've been a woodworker most of my life.
Okay.
So I do enjoy getting into the wood, but learning this metal stuff is completely awesome. I've had a good time doing it. I've actually got to do some welding and some grinding and some cutting, and it's been real educational. So let me encourage you with that too. If you're on one side of the spectrum and haven't ever messed with the other side of the spectrum, give it a try. New things are always fun.
It is, and it's so different. So like for me, I'm more on the metal side, and so dealing with him on the woodworking side, it's been such an eye-opening thing, because to me, you can play with metal, you can bend metal, you can do all these things with that. Whereas wood, you mess up a piece, man, you got to almost restart in my mind, but also learn with him that you don't. And so, that's the things that we're kind of hoping to get out there on this videos is, here's other sides of the spectrum, here's what we can offer, and here's our products that can help you do that.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today. Once again, send your questions in, TechTalk@KLINGSPOR.com. Y'all have a great week.
Yep, see you next time.